Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, a show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. Welcome to our Week 2 preview episode. So, what are we going over in today's episode? Well, we're going over the TCU and North Carolina game that happened on Monday, since we did our show on Monday before the game, and it really wasn't much of a game, but we still got to talk about it. We are then going over our top 25 thoughts for the AP poll, our Week 2 previews, and our predictions. And the whole DeBoer situation really has escalated a lot since the game on Saturday. So, with that out of the way, we've got to talk about TCU and North Carolina. Chapel Bill is Chapel Dull. TCU came in and mollywopped UNC 48-14. So, what does this mean? Well, first, we're going to talk about TCU because they are the ones that kind of had the better showing. Josh Hoover, the quarterback for TCU, seems to continue to have the same offensive production that he had last season. Now, I think that the way he looked and the way he played so comfortably in an away game, even though, yes, it's North Carolina, and I think they were geared and ready to go because Sonny Dykes has been at a higher... He's been in the national championship game, so he's able to coach his players in that kind of pressure point. If he's able to continue putting up these numbers in this performance, TCU is 100% going to embark on their dark horse run to the Big 12 championship game. Will it happen? I don't know. Their schedule is still pretty daunting. But on the other side of the ball, Gio Lopez, the North Carolina quarterback, looked awful. Now, Max Johnson, their backup, came in, and he 100% looks to be the style of quarterback that Bill Belichick likes to use and play, and should 100% start next week over Gio. Why is that? Maybe Gio just had a bad game. No, Gio didn't just have a bad game. He had an abysmal game. Gio had the worst stats I've ever seen, and he did not have the group of five to power four transition that analysts thought would happen, as well as me. I thought he was going to transition very well. I saw him play at University of South Alabama. Gosh, that was terrible. And he looked pretty good, but that was group of five, and the transition wasn't made. Now, the worst stat by far for him was that he had not completed a pass for over 8 minutes in the game. And you may think, well, that may not feel as long. Well, it was an hour in the broadcast when they actually brought it up. A whole hour had spanned before they brought it up. So that's how bad those stats were, and that's how bad his performance was. Outside of their first drive, North Carolina looked poised to have this Bill Belichick team. You saw everyone celebrating on the sidelines, and Bill Belichick just cool, calm, collected. Like he's won 6 Super Bowls. He's experienced a lot better than just having an opening drive for the North Carolina football program. But you know that the game was also very lopsided and bad to the point where Kirk Herbstreit had his dog, and they did a whole bit where he put the headset on the dog, and the dog was calling the game, quote unquote. Now, that's not just bad. I'd say that's pretty rough. And this game, transitioning into our next topic, showed us a perfect example of the transition, aka 70 new players on this UNC roster, and how the development of some of these teams as a whole, when you rely solely on the transfer portal, or at least don't know how to evaluate these players in the portal, show. The players end up with a lack of development for team play and mental toughness. And overall, it seems in the world of college football and sports, college especially, emotional growth in players are being damaged the most because there is such a lack of a team mentality. And that's what happens when you have FSU. Last season, they lose one game and the whole sandcastle falls. It looks pretty on the outside, but as soon as someone comes over and kicks it a little bit, it just crumbles. And it's not looking good, and everyone's ready to leave. Now, one thing I can't feel shocked about is that it almost felt like this was a message. Sonny Dykes was sending a message from the ACC and all the other coaches and programs to Bill Belichick. It seems that like they are out for Bill Belichick's blood, and Sonny Dykes put some in the water, as Bill during the offseason really sucked up all the ACC energy since he arrived at Chapel Hill, which honestly has probably helped a lot of these other teams go unnoticed and underrated, such as TCU. I originally had TCU picked for this game, and last minute I got sucked into the Bill Belichick hype, switched to UNC. But it's safe to say that the hype is pretty much all in dead. Now, they do play, I believe, 5 out of the 6 projected bottom-tier teams in the ACC, so we'll see if he can't get something figured out. But overall, I'm liking how TCU's shaping out to be a dark horse in the Big 12 for the title game, and UNC is going to struggle for a bowl game this year, and there is no title hopes for them this season in the ACC. Next is our AP poll. The AP poll came out for week 2, and yes, it didn't change much. There's a lot of SEC bias still, and we are basing off the rankings off of the AP is basing their rankings off of who they thought was good. So it can still be a little skewed and misconstrued, but there are just a small amount of takeaways that I have about it, because in the grand scheme of things, we really haven't seen these teams face much adversity through these cupcake games that they typically play in the first 4 weeks of the season. Now, first off, I personally think that LSU should be number 1. Right now, they are at number 3, and Ohio State should be 2, and Penn State number 3. And I say this in the fact that LSU looked better than Ohio State last week, and they played an away game, LSU did, even though it was Death Valley, it was Clemson's Death Valley, and it was a very hostile environment. And they really handled it pretty well. The score easily could have been about 24-10, something around there, but we're not going to argue with the refs. And Penn just didn't play anyone. They played in Nevada. So I don't see why Penn gets to stay at 2 when all they did was nothing productive or amazing on the field. So that's my biggest gripe, at least within the top 5. I like Miami at 5. I like Georgia at 4. Even though they didn't play anyone, Miami showed that they were able to beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame didn't look like the star-studded team that we almost thought they were going to be. And my next little small gripe is I really don't understand how South Carolina can be moved up to number 10 after they had a awful first half against Virginia Tech. Like, I'm not going to forget that first half that they had. They looked sloppy, messy. They did not look like South Carolina football, especially an SEC team against a team like Virginia Tech. And I think that the whole momentum change in the game was the 80-yard punt return in the fourth quarter that gained momentum for South Carolina. And you may say, yes, it was a touchdown, but in my opinion, a special teams, especially the special teams players, and when you're out on the field, it's so chaotic. I feel as special teams create special moments, but they don't play every snap. What does this mean? It means, yes, special teams plays, like if you have a great special teams, that can be a factor in any game. We've seen it time in and time out when you have an explosive returner that can return kickoffs for touchdowns, and if you have an explosive punter. But those are punts. If that is going to be a fundamental part of their culture for this team, then yes, I argue special teams use it if it's consistent. But what we are consistently seeing, how we should consistently rank, is how these teams play every snap, as that is the majority of the ball game. And they beat Virginia Tech. I don't see a warrant to get up and break into the top 10. I believe it has everything to do with the Lenoris Sellers hype train for the Heisman. But honestly, outside of those two gripes, I think the poll's okay. I mean, due to the idea that many of these teams have not accurately been tested, so we don't know how these teams are going to face adversity. I think I'll say this as a Bama sexual. Yes, FSU up at 14 is totally warranted. Bama at 21 is totally warranted. And you may say, oh, well, yeah, of course you're going to say that. You're a Bama fan. And my whole thing is we don't know if FSU is good or bad, and we don't know if Alabama is good or bad yet. We have to play it out. But if we're going off of what the AP says and what their player rankings model is going off of, then that's where they have it. Until we actually see these teams play better teams, and until we get past week 4, which we like to dub the fog of war, we're really not going to see how these teams shape out truly until then. So we are now going into our matchups for week 2. And I'm going to say, honestly, this is a pretty underrated week with the matchups we have. In past years, it feels like we usually, weeks 2 and 3 are mainly filled with these cupcake games. The week 1 has, yes, a lot of cupcake games, but they are filled with also a lot of high-powered teams that want to have this showing, this great showing. But this is pretty an underrated week. And this first game that I want to talk about is number 12, Arizona State going to Mississippi State. Now, Arizona State it's pretty cute, has been using cowbells in practice. Just a couple of coaches and staff members kind of using it. Super cute. But I don't think that cuteness and a little couple of them at practice can truly fully prepare them for what it actually sounds like in that stadium unless they blast it on the speakers as well. I think this could be a very tough road game for them and will be truly their first test of the season, where some people still doubt them without Scatterboo. I think Sam Levitt's good. I've got Arizona State winning this game, really because Mississippi State seems to really shoot themselves in the foot a lot. Last week against Southern Miss, they had some great plays, and as soon as they would have a breakout play, it would be followed with a flag. And so it was almost like they didn't want to score. Funny enough saying that. So I just don't think that they are a disciplined team. Yes, it was one of their in-state rivals, but it's not like that big of a stadium. They're going to be home, but I think that they are still going to make some of these fundamental mistakes that will cost them the game. And next is probably the game of the week, and that is number 15, Michigan, against and at number 18, Oklahoma. This is Bryce Underwood's first real game this season, and I'm very interested to also see how Oklahoma and John Mateer handles a strong defense. Coming into this game, it seems that Brent Venables really has lied low on the radar. I think this is a must-win game for him, just in his favorability scale, to tip back in his favor within the Oklahoma fan base. They came off great win against Bama last season, but maybe that win isn't maturing as much as it looks now. And Oklahoma may have a great quarterback in John Mateer. I think he's phenomenal. He's a lot of fun to watch. He is a great passer. But outside of that, their run game does not look the strongest. It looks a little weak. They ran for just over 100 yards last week, but it does not look the best. And how is that going to match up against this Michigan defense? Now, if this turns into an offensive shootout and it is between the two quarterbacks, I'm going to have to give it to John Mateer. If it comes down to a defensive slugfest, it's going to be Michigan. Now, with the fact that Oklahoma is at home, I'm going to have to give the game to Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is going to win. This because Michigan played against New Mexico State last week, and they didn't seem great defensively. They didn't seem great defensively, and Bryce Underwood, yeah, he got some good plays, but I don't think it's the true playing time that he needed before he really goes into Gaylord Stadium in Oklahoma. And then this next game, phenomenal that this rivalry is back. It is Kansas at Missouri. The border war is back, and there are two fun offenses that are going to clash in this renewed rivalry. Lance Leopold for Kansas could be falling out of favor if his team doesn't win this game, because we can't forget, with a new rivalry comes bragging rights. What do those bragging rights entail? Well, you're going to beat Missouri, the border war, in this revitalized reunion of rivalry. Yet, Lance Leopold can't get bragging rights that he still, at his tenure at Kansas, is below 500 in the win column. So he really needs to win this to show, hey, I promise we're on the rise. We're on the rise. And a win here would show everyone at Kansas that, okay, maybe we've got the right coach, we've got the right quarterback, and we are ready to go this season. Because they're in the Big 12. The Big 12 it's an open book. You can read everything you want, but it's like a book by Agatha Christie. You won't know who wins until the very end. Now, on the other side, I am super excited to see what Missouri's quarterback Bo Pribula can do with this Big 12 against this Big 12 defense, and see how much Eli Drinkwitz teams dip after a major roster turnover. So when I say this is about the first time in Eli Drinkwitz's tenure at Missouri that we're seeing a stark drop-off of talent within the team as a whole. He has done pretty well, and I would say almost arguably him and Lane Kiffin are battling to kind of be in this kind of top-tier SEC group, and Eli Drinkwitz has been able to do that. He's had a couple 10-win seasons there, and he has shown an electric offense that should have won one or two games last season that they didn't. Now, the good news is that it's at Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz plays very well at Missouri when they finish the game. They need to finish the game. They didn't against LSU last year. They almost lost to Kansas State last year. They had that crazy win over them. But Eli Drinkwitz, if he is able to have Bo Pribula look phenomenal against a Power 4 team, and his roster plays a great game, we're going to be sitting back and saying, okay, Eli Drinkwitz, great fundamental coach. He's got great staff around him. He is a good coach to have. And I think if he is able to win this game and continue to possibly get a backdoor into the playoffs, we'll see what happens to his contract. But outside of that and this as a whole, I've got Missouri winning the game. And it is overall for both of these programs the biggest game outside of conference play on their schedule that could be the tipping point for either one having a successful season in their eyes and the fans' eyes, especially for Missouri's hope if they want to get a backdoor entrance into the playoff. I know, crazy, but I do believe that there is a possibility with their schedule and how Eli Drinkwitz commands that offense. And now, next is Illinois at Duke. I have Illinois winning this game, mainly because I have them predicted to make the playoffs. And this was one of the games I had circled when choosing this. This is Illinois' chance to make a statement and say, hey, we are looking like a good deadly team in the Big Ten. We're going to come out here and just dominate Duke, and I hope they do. I hope they dominate Duke. I think that's how it's going to go. I don't think it's going to be a very close game at all, even though it's at Duke. Duke's got a great team. Illinois is going to game manage that game to a certain point where Duke is not going to be able to breathe. Now, last time I said this, yes, Bama lost. So am I a little nervous? Yes and no. No, because I like Illinois. Yes, because I don't want to jinx myself, but I probably just did. Anyways, so yes, Illinois. And then this may not look like a crazy game on paper, but what's crazy is that number 20 Ole Miss is going to Kentucky after Kentucky last season beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss. And that was probably the catalyst for Ole Miss not going to the playoffs. It is impressive, to say the least, that they were able to pull that off last year. But after this year, it's got to be different. I think Lane has circled this, starred it, underlined it, asterisks, everything against Kentucky. And Kentucky has been on the come down. Ole Miss needs to get revenge on these Wildcats. And I think that is what's going to happen after Kentucky and their roster has severely declined for them. So even though it's a pretty easy pick, it's nothing narratively or game changing about the season, I still think it's a fun game to watch. Let's see if Ole Miss chokes again or not. And then we have the Iowa at number 16 Iowa State game. This is also going to be a great game, great matchup. I think this is Rocco Beck's chance to actually cement himself in the program's history books as a legend. The last 5 years has seen a different winner. It has not been the same team for 2 years in a row. So and Iowa State won it last year. So if he can come in here, win it, I think that just gives him more fuel to his fire in going down as a legend in the program. Last season, they broke their single season win record. So the series has also been very defensive. I think it's been a one possession game almost the last 4 years, especially. Now, if this Iowa State team can come out of the game with a win, then they are 100% the team to beat in the Big 12 and kind of cast Arizona State to the side because of that. Now, Iowa, they have, the FCS quarterback, Gronowski. He's supposed to be a scrambler, a fast man on his feet. But that's not what Iowa has been known for on their offense. They've always been known as this defensive monstrosity that is going to attempt to suffocate you, and then they are just going to punt it on offense after their failed 3 downs. So yes, Iowa is going to look dominant on defense. They always will, but I don't think they are just quite there yet with their offense. And I've got Iowa State winning this. Rocco Beck is going to cement himself in Iowa State history, and he is going to start a run the next couple of games on his performance. So, Cyhawk game, it's going to Iowa State. That's all I got to say. And now, another game that I find very interesting, South Florida at Florida. Now, I have a feeling that Florida will win this game, but we cannot count out the fact that if Billy Napier wins in a close way, then his hot seat could be heating back up just a little bit, just be simmering just a little bit. But South Florida came and they beat up on Boise State. Was I shocked about that? No. Did I? I'll say kind of. I felt like South Florida would win. I didn't think they would absolutely dominate Boise State like that. Though I'm interested to see if they're able to put up a fight. They were able to put up a fight against Bama the last 2 years. So let's see if they can't put up a fight against Florida. And if this game goes down to the wire and Billy Napier barely wins or loses, then that hot seat is getting very hot again. Though for Billy Napier's sake, I don't think that'll happen. DJ Lagway should go out there and dominate and show them why Florida is back on the map. And then our last game is UCLA at UNLV. And I'm putting this up here because I have UNLV barely making the playoffs. So, of course, I'm going to have a tight look on them and microscope them on this show because I think it's exciting. Once they lose a game, then they're kaput. We won't be looking at them. We'll be looking at the next group of 5 team that is probably going to take it, which is Tulane. And UNLV, they need to have this win very badly if they want to start building this foundation and run for a CFP bid. If they aren't able to compete against a bad UCLA team led by Nico Imalieve, then their playoff hopes might be crushed with how fragile a G5 season, group of 5 season can be if they want a chance at getting into the college football playoff. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that one. But that is all of our game picks. I'm choosing UNLV on that one. So going over all of them again. Going for Arizona State over Mississippi State. We're going Oklahoma over Michigan. We're going Missouri over Kansas. We're going Illinois over Duke. Ole Miss over Kentucky. Iowa State over Iowa. Florida over South Florida. And UNLV over UCLA. And now, I didn't want to bring this up, but it seems like it has been blown out of proportion so much. Things went from bad on Saturday for Bama fans, and for Kalen DeBoer, things got a whole lot worse. So we're going to take a little reflection on this Bama situation. So on Tuesday, I was having my coffee. I see, the Kalen DeBoer press conference for University of Louisiana Monroe Week. Let's turn it on, see what happens. And I'm watching it, and I will say this. I think he needs to go to a public speaking class first off at the university, because the amount of times I heard was pretty despicable. It was pretty bad. I thought he was practicing his ums. Every question was an He felt like he was on the defensive. He was not using that time to speak in front of the press and the fan base and the world, since it's on YouTube. He did not take advantage of it. The Bama team has to make a statement. But before getting into the statement that he made last week was that they had done well and they had prepared. And the news called him out on that. And I said, oh boy, as Bama-sexual, as a Bama fan, we are in trouble. Just the way that he was unable to recollect that or kind of deflect that, it was bad. But this team needs to make a statement after the FSU loss, and that means more than a win. This means a complete game full of max effort by every player on that roster. There have been already outcries, which I think are so exaggerated by the Paul Feinbaum show when he has his Alabama guests that are routine on there come on and just yell whatever and give him his clicks so he can get his views and say he's a great media personality. But this has escalated quicker than I thought. There were booster quotes that came out, which was very shocking. There are rumors that are coming out from how the Players got DoorDash before the game. They let their girlfriends in, and it's gotten bad to worse. And when he came in, I said I am giving him a grace period of 2 years. He's got a grace period. Outside of that, he's on his own. So for me, I still think I'm here to give him a chance. He may change my mind if this team struggles against ULM. But this Kalen DeBoer situation has turned into a nightmare for the Alabama community. And I'll say this, as much as you want to get rid of him, we're stuck with him. $70 million buyout. $70 million buyout. If I don't think LSU would fire Brian Kelly after having a bad season this year because of a $60 million payout, I doubt Bama's going to do it. I doubt, but crazier things have happened. Overall, this fan base has turned on him so fast, and every coach in the nation that was presumably on the hot seat this season, like coming into week 1, it must feel a lot better for all the other coaches that were on the hot seat, as he's catching all the news, all the social media flack, everything. So all the coaches that thought they were on the hot seat, you can sit down a little bit and kick your feet up, because this is going to take the attention for college football for probably at least 2 more weeks. Now, that is the only thing I really wanted to comment on for our section about, reflections and news coming into the weekend. And on Monday, we kind of threw up in the air that there was this Heisman hype going around. And I think, yes, Garrett Nussmeier is up there, but we gave some candidates, but I think Lenora Sellers after this week is definitely in the Heisman hype seat that the media is kind of pushing for and that everyone is wanting to talk about. So Lenora Sellers going into this week is on our Heisman hype seat. Now, next episode will be out on Sunday, and we're going to be giving you our whole sweet week 2 recap with renewed rivalries and some pretty interesting games, to say the least. Now, I'm Nick Watts. Thank all of you for tuning in into this episode, and we'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.